Today's episode is brought to you by the number 2.
It's high noon.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to High Noon Podcast, the competitive Overwatch podcast. I'm your host, Blevins. With me, as always, is Deathblow. What's up, buddy?
Not too much, my man. I feel like I narrowly dodged a bullet with this weekend's games, and so I'm ready to get on board and start talking about them. It was a roller coaster this weekend, my friend.
I mean, you dodged one bullet, but you took
Another one square in the chest. You're
one
not
and a
wrong.
half bullets, if not two full bullets.
They flipped games though. Well, we'll get into it more soon.
Yeah, well, we'll certainly be talking about that for sure. But let's do a little bit of housekeeping before we do. As I've been reiterating constantly, all of our shows are now on Spotify, and we, thanks to Blaze and Bob, shout outs to Bob. Our podcasts are now our titles are now optimized a little bit more for iTunes and other things. So maybe we'll get some new people. So if you are brand new here and you found us by searching for Overwatch on the podcast, welcome, friends. You are in for it. I don't even know. I don't even know what you've gotten yourself into, but I'm sure it'll be fun. So, of course, a couple weeks ago, we had a new Around the Payload. We're going to be having another new episode of Around the Payload next week, so stay tuned for that. Last week, we had a great episode. If you did miss it, we had Frito from Your Overwatch YouTube channel on, and man, as maybe we'll briefly discuss, we made some predictions, and maybe not our best week for predictions, but I don't think anyone had a really great week of predictions.
It was a yikes week for sure for anybody actually trying to keep track of their predictions.
That's a zoink, Scoob.
I may have fared the best of the three of us, though. Although, actually, you fared best because you made very few predictions. So by virtue of not doing them, you got the least wrong of all of us. But
true.
The one you for certain made, already not true.
Yeah, definitely got. Well, we'll talk about that in a bit. Blackwatch Report, of course, brand new episode coming out for your Tier 2 Overwatch coverage in foul play, keeping the ball rolling with Fantasy Overwatch League play. Playoff time, boys. We're getting there.
Playoffs.
I got the sounds. This time it was just me not having the right thing up. There we go.
Playoffs.
There we go. Sorry about that. Yeah, definitely some big weeks coming up. But before we get into the news and such, let's talk about what we did last week. Deathblow, anything fun and exciting for you?
Kept up my PTR game hours. Maybe not as much as the week before, but definitely continuing to delve deep back into Overwatch as far as playing it, getting ready for the new role lock. Trying to learn that new hero. Man, he is super, super powerful, but super weird and very high skill cap. It's going to take a lot of time to get used to him. I'm very curious to see what kind of impact he will be having on the meta. As we found out, it's going to be part of playoffs here as well, once we get the end of the regular season. So, yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun to kind of watch all that either unravel or unfold, depending on where you're sitting, I suppose, and what team you're rooting for and what happens when we get there. But, yeah, have been having a lot of fun with that. Finally dipped my toes into the auto chess waters a little bit. Hated it. I'm gone. It's the BR of strategy games. It's just it's not for me. I can't do it. But yeah, otherwise, just been hanging out and relaxing.
Yeah, I'm on the opposite spectrum of auto chess games. I have liked them since the beginning, and I now really like Teamfight Tactics more than the other ones. Significantly more than the other ones, actually. But yeah, so I've been streaming that, been playing the same gambit of card games, doing daily quests, MTG Arena, Hearthstone, all that good stuff. I'm playing a little bit of Smash, but not as much, just because I'm like, trying to grind team fight tactics right now.
We do need to get back to Smash.
Yes,
though,
because unlike almost every other game I've played in the last like 8 years, I actually just like to play Smash regardless of anything else, and there's no reward or anything for playing Smash besides the fun that you're having while playing it. So,
right.
And that's really the only thing that's really the only game in a very long time that I felt that way about. So, yes, we definitely do need to get some Smash in, but no one wants to hear about that. Let's move on, and we'll move into some news. And a couple of pieces of news here. I don't know if anything is too... Well, we'll see. Coach 815 has left the London Spitfire. I mean, I'm going to be honest, Death. If you would have asked me what team Coach 815 coached for before this announcement, I would have had about a 1 in 20 chance of getting it right.
I think I would have done better
Maybe
than a 1 in
19,
20 chance,
I know
right?
It's not NY.
Mine would have been like
Toronto.
1 in 5 to 1 in 10 because I think I can do a good job with a good number of teams coaching.
Who's the coaching staff for the Chengdu Hunters?
Well, I couldn't answer it like that, but if you worded it like, who does this person? But
Sure,
Chengdu's definitely on the list of teams I don't
Right.
overly interact with as well as London. So, yeah, I didn't know. I don't know much about what's currently there other than they have the habit of typically they fire their coaches or get rid of their coaches or move them around after they win a stage championship. So telling to me that they waited until that wasn't possible for them this year in order to do it. No, that's just a goofy coincidence and a kind of a weird anomaly with London, but they seem to be doing just fine. So I don't think this is anything to worry about.
Yeah, I mean, they also have the habit of making changes like that. I mean, they did the whole active roster before or last year, right? Like they make these changes. I mean, it's fine. It seems like they went 2-0 this week too, so maybe they're just gearing up for their playoff run. Maybe they don't want to have too much extra coaching staff to pay the championship bonuses to. I mean, I doubt that that's the case, but yeah, definitely an interesting one. I mean, it says that he left, but again, we don't know what that actually means. But
words don't mean anything
when there's not transparency. But we also saw Curry Shot join the Guangzhou Charge as a strategic coach. Do you know anything about Curry Shot?
I believe he was with the Mayhem Academy a little bit. So we've seen obviously a good chunk of their academy team make its way into Overwatch League and be successful. Fact Fiction, Shax, Mangachu's another one. So I think there's a lot of hope there. I think that's a fairly decent resume. Obviously, I mean, they basically the academy players that have been promoted from within Florida have a better resume than the Florida Overwatch League team does at this point in Overwatch League. So I think it makes a lot of sense that not only are there a handful of successful call-ups from the roster that the coaches would kind of follow suit and find their way into the league as well. So I think that's a great signing from everything I can tell.
Yeah, and Guangzhou Charge, I mean, we saw them. They're still wheeling and dealing. Obviously picking up Fraggy and Bishu. And as we saw this week, Fraggy not a starter, so looks like Guangzhou's really investing in the next season and in the future of the team. So really good to see for Guangzhou fans. Another coaching addition here is Moby Dick has joined the Toronto Defiant as an assistant coach. Again, we've talked about how we have a lot of confidence as Toronto fans and just as Overwatch League followers. We have a lot of confidence in Bishop, but we've also seen
Some things now.
We've seen some things now too. I mean, obviously Toronto's struggling right now. Don't necessarily think it's because of Bishop's lack of talent, but perhaps he's been overburdened, and just adding more coaching staff there is obviously going to be good.
Yeah, I did think it was curious they're going so heavily Western now. I mean, they're still decidedly mixed, but they are kind of transitioning to seemingly more Western than Korean. But this is a coach coming from the Korean scene. He's been with O2 Blast. He was actually with NRG for a little while, so definitely worked with some some Western teams in the past, so makes a lot of sense. But yeah, last I knew he was on O2 Blast, I think, and he's been around the scene for a little while, so I think that's another good hire as well.
Yeah, definitely want more experience. I mean, even if Toronto still technically in the play-in race potentially. Maybe, I don't know. I haven't done the math. Even if they're not necessarily, in the playoffs this year, and I think we're going to start seeing a lot of these. I think the signing window is done for players, but that doesn't mean we can't. I think we might be seeing a lot more coaching and office changes and additions coming up here as we see teams start investing for next season. Speaking of the lack of transparency we alluded to earlier, Munchkin has now officially left the Soul Dynasty, or as we are calling it, will probably be on Boston's active roster next week. I mean,
can't rule it out.
Yeah. We've beaten this dead horse of transparency. I wouldn't say enough, but at least enough for right now, where we don't need to reiterate it right now. We can save that for another time.
And at least in classic Soul fashion, they did things in such a logical way that makes so much sense that in back-to-back weeks, we're giving you news that Munchkin has left the Soul Dynasty. It's just they spaced it out, right? Oh, yeah. He's just inactive, and then now he's gone. So yeah, we don't know the manner of his leaving since we have no faith in the tweet and in the text of the tweet.
Yep.
So yeah, we don't know exactly how that was. I assume him and Fissure are starting up a new contenders team. I'm just making stuff up. But yeah, so it'll be curious to see where he lands. He did have, I don't know, I'd say a decent showing in his time in Overwatch League. I know a lot of people thought he was a weak link at times on that roster, especially last year when they were having a rougher go of things. But I always thought he acquitted himself well. He never seemed like it's a spot where you can improve on having him, but he wasn't, I don't think, like a glaring weakness or a major concern for the roster at any.
What did Taco used to call him? Big Munch or Little Munch or Young Munch or...
I don't remember.
That feels like it was.
I do miss Taco though. Yeah, Taco, tweet at us if you're still around. We love you.
I think he got absorbed by. I don't know how much. I don't know how much he wants told. So
he's been eaten by a large corporation. That's all.
A large corporation of which he's employed. I do miss Taco. He's such a good guy. But yeah, you go from starter is the top position, then active or starter, then sub. Then active roster, then retired, then academy team, then super retired, then starter on a different team, and then leave the league. Those are the levels of employment for an Overwatch League player.
Munchkin is certainly on one of those levels.
Yeah, you can clip that and post that on Reddit. That's official. Pete Flister told me that. He sent it to me in the Christmas card this year that he sent in July. Last piece of news we have here is that I guess this is almost an announcement of an announcement in a way, but it's a kind of a preview. I guess it's closer to an announcement than an announcement of an announcement. But the 2019 Overwatch World Cup Team USA roster, at least 12 of the finalists, or the 12 players of which they're going to pull their top 7 for, has been revealed. On the tank line, we've got Muma, Super, Fact, Fiction, and Space. Damage dealers, we've got Dante, Corey, Sinatra, KSF, and Hydration. And for supports, we've got Sleepy, Moth, and Raucous. Any initial impressions on this 12-man roster?
I think they did a really smart thing here, and that was go heavy on the positions where they kind of want some flexibility. So, for example, who was going to contest Space for off tank, right? So let's not perpetrate a charade here and bring in another off tank, and so let's just add in all three of the USA main tanks that are playing at a top tier level right now. So they're bringing Muma, Super, and Fact Fiction. If they'd already made a decision between Sleepy and Raucous, exactly 50% of the Overwatch League scene would be up in arms over their decision. So right now they're bringing both, and then they're just focusing on a lot of variety at the damage position. We're heavy on the what's it called? Specialists here, I think, for damage dealers. So they're going to want to, I believe, bring all three. The only DPS I can think of that I think plays well enough on a wide variety of heroes to really make it is probably Jake. And even that's kind of a recent development, so I don't know how much he would have been. And last year he didn't try out; he took himself out of the running. So I don't know.
He'll be
for
at
sure
the World
if
Cup. He'll be commentating it probably.
Right. So I don't know if he was even considered or trying to make it onto the team. But yeah, so they're heavy on the specialists. We'll save this. This is basically just to put it on your guys' radar. If you really like the World Cup, if you're interested in the rosters, the teams are announcing their final sevens very soon. Some of them are already out. The 12s all have to be out at a minimum today. So you can keep an eye out on that. There's a lot of conversation about it going on in our Discord, discord.me/High Noon Podcast. Join us there. The last thing I will say about the Overwatch World Cup is Raucous or Riot 2019. Let's go, boys.
I'm also will add that we have a better chance of winning this year because there is no Zach Ray on the roster. Just putting that out.
I like
there.
how you said Zach Ray, who's a Smash player, instead of Zachary.
Well, that's true. Zach Ray is
decidedly not on the Overwatch World Cup team. That is,
and he wouldn't be on Team USA anyway. He'd be on Team Japan. Yes, Zachary. You're 100% correct. I mentioned the 16-year-old phenom. Japanese Smash Bros. Players.
Wait till you see this guy's Captain Falcon. It's just
no. His Pokemon trainer is the new hotness in his wolf. But enough about Japanese teenage Smash Bros. Players. Let's move on here. Oh, that's funny. It's tournament talk. All right, nice little transition here. Man, this was a week, as you alluded to earlier, full of bullets being just slung around. I'm trying to think if this was my worst week ever as a fan of Overwatch League. Like if I've ever been more disappointed in terms of number of games that did not turn out in the favor that I wanted them to. I don't know.
Which coincidentally makes it just my best week. I had a grand time this week.
Right. Well, I mean, not the perfect time as we'll start.
It didn't start great.
Yeah. But let's run through these. On Thursday, we had Paris Eternal take down the Houston Outlaws 3-1. And LA Gladiators beat NYXL 3-1. So right there, just both of us sitting on the ground, pistols pointed at the back of our heads, and shots fired.
We were a very salty podcast for a little while to start out this week.
Yeah. We also had Guangzhou Charge beat the Philadelphia Fusion 3-2. And the last game on Thursday was Vancouver Titans beating the Shanghai Dragons 3-1. Let's pause here and talk about what happened in these games. We talked a little bit before the show about Paris versus Houston, and it was less so that Paris looked amazing and more so that Houston just did not look good.
I mean, credit where it's due. Paris did at times look very, very good. They were much more in control over the maps. And honestly, at the end of this map, my attitude was Houston's done. It's too late in the year. There's a lot of teams vying for these final spots. You can't be giving away games you're supposed to win and expect to make the playoffs, because now you're forcing yourself to win games that you were kind of predetermined to lose, right? Like you have to make up for those losses, and then they already had 2 games to make up overall. So it was a very rough start. Houston did win the control map, and it was disgustingly lopsided. Paris did nothing. Dante destroyed them single-handedly on Tracer. It was particularly brutal, and then it couldn't have gone much in the much more in the opposite direction as the maps played out. Houston was trying to do the ice fishing composition, and they just couldn't pull it off. The May walls weren't stopping the hook combos. Their hook combos were being stopped by the May walls, and they just were being outshined. Linkser did not turn it on and start popping off on Widowmaker like I said they were really going to need him to do. And as a result, they got bodied here. Soon and Shadowburn were just the better DPS core, as Linkser had a rough outing. Jake played pretty well. He's been very consistent over their last 3 or 4 matches or so, playing at a very high level. It just wasn't enough. The tank compositions weren't working out. It was just a very rough go to start things out for Houston here to open the week.
Yeah, definitely a rough start for Houston, but I mean, even also a rough start for NYXL here as we saw them play against Los Angeles Gladiators. And man, I think, it's kind of almost like revealing like the weaknesses of NYXL and like showing you just how much they rely on Jonak as their centerpiece on Zenyatta. Like when he plays Ana, he's just not like he's not there. He's not as good. He's not that same sort of threat on Ana as he is on Zenyatta.
Yeah, he's still very good at the Ana. He's just not head and shoulders the best player at his position on the in that particular role. But in all honesty, from what we've seen on Zen, he hasn't really been, I don't think, heads and shoulders the best. I mean, you could really look at the tape and compare side by side, but it's very difficult in sports to repeat the kind of performance that Zenya, Jonak had last year.
Right.
So it makes a lot of sense to me that there was some regression there. I don't think New York got the best usage out of their DPS line. They looked a little unsure. I didn't think
the tracer he once was, or at least not comparatively.
No, and the tank line struggled a little more than I thought they would, as well. Just kind of moving into the kind of ice fishing meta. I don't remember too much of the comps they played in the match specifically, but I didn't like some of their DPS decision making, and I thought the tank play specifically was a little bit worse than you've seen in the past. And as Sureforce said, it just didn't matter because the LA Gladiators have the best 2 DPS players in the world, bar none. End of story. And it was a little bit hard to argue with them after that surprise upset performance there. But we'll use the transitive property to change who the best 2 DPS players in the world are a little bit later on.
Yeah. I mean, the other let me just bring out my sandbag excuse. LA Gladiators and NYXL in slightly different positions in terms of what they need to do in this stage to affect their playoff chances. So maybe there's some of that. I mean, I don't think it's as much of that as much as it's NYXL does not ever feel hurried into transitioning a meta. So, I mean, we've seen this almost every time that a giant meta change has happened, and when that meta change, I mean, a big one, sometimes they just outplay the opponents regardless. They just force it. It doesn't matter, but usually they keep doing that. But now they couldn't possibly do that because of the restriction. So NYXL I'm not that they can be resilient to change, but they're not quick to do it. So I mean, obviously, I'm not worried yet. I mean, I think that they're probably locked into playoffs, right? Like even if they lost the entire stage, they're probably still in.
I think the only team locked into the top 6 right now is Vancouver, and I went to the website to try to confirm that. And of course, they don't give me the locked, eliminated kind of designations that they really should on the standings page.
It's
not like it's a standings page on their website or anything, but so I don't know for certain if they're locked. I know they're locked into the play-ins, but I don't think they're actually locked into the top 6 yet.
Sure.
They can't be, right? Because they've only played once, and they're only 5 games up. Right. So yeah, they can't be.
Okay. So regardless, they're very much favored to be in the top.
They'll be the 2 seed if for no other reason than their division says they're going to be the 2 seed.
Right. So not too much to worry about for NYXL. So I mean, take that for what it's worth. But all right, let's go through the rest of these matches here. On Friday, we saw Washington Justice beat the Toronto Defiant 3-1. That one hurt almost more than the LA Gladiators.
In my heart, just my
Yeah.
soul died a little bit in the end of that match.
I took the bullet to the back of the neck and somehow survived the NYXL shot. Opened up the cell door just to see a just buckshot shotgun pointing right at my face as that happened.
Do you know why this match wasn't the worst thing ever for me, Blevins?
Why is that?
I was actually eating Korean barbecue instead of watching it, so it
Ooh.
worked out. It worked out fairly okay for me.
I mean, can't be too mad about that. But yeah, we'll talk about that after we go through the rest of the matches. London Spitfire beat the Dallas Fuel 3-1. San Francisco Shock won the Nighthawk Router Championship belt or whatever they called it. I'll put an asterisk there because I actually do want to bring that up. 3-1 over the Seoul Dynasty. Chengdu Hunters beat the Philadelphia Fusion 3-2. Saturday we have LA Valiant win 3-2 over the Paris Eternal. Guangzhou Charge beats Boston Uprising 4-0. Houston avenges the NYXL 3-1 over the LA Gladiators. Atlanta Reign beats the Hangzhou Spark 3-1. And on Sunday we saw the Shanghai Dragons beat the Seoul Dynasty 3-1. London Spitfire beat the Toronto Defiant 3-1. Vancouver Titans with the second 4-0 of the weekend. 4-0 versus the Florida Mayhem, and Chengdu Hunters round out the week 3-2 over the Boston Uprising. I wanted to bring up the San Francisco versus Seoul match, not because of the match itself, but because this was one of the ones I actually got to see live while it was happening, and they were bringing up this like Nighthawk Router Championship belt thing. I know that Seoul is sponsored by Nighthawk Router or whatever. I'm assuming that San Francisco is too. So they had this thing where it's like they must have sponsored the game or something, and they like brought out the belts. And they did like a little mini production thing, which was fine. Like I thought it was funny. Bren did a whole thing, but like man, I'm all for sponsorship money and teams investing in esports. I'm all for cool integrations and having fun with it. But did that feel like I was just getting beat over the head with, it's the Nighthawk Router. They're the champion of the Nighthawk Router championship belt. Seoul Dynasty. This is the second one. It's like, man, you're making a mountain out of a molehill if I've ever seen it. And it just like the execution of it was fine because the belts are cool, but they are really trying hard to make me care about something that I could not possibly care less about. In that
it's
they're
dumb.
being sponsored by Nighthawk Router.
It makes me not want to buy a Nighthawk Router.
Yeah.
And I'm always looking for opportunities to make Mean Girls jokes, but stop trying to make the Nighthawk Router happen, okay? It's not going to happen. Somebody turn that into a meme and send it to me, please. But yeah, that's.
I just got an email. Today's episode is brought to you by Nighthawk Routers. This is the High Noon Podcast Nighthawk Router Showdown show.
I just want to say I love Nighthawk Routers. I only use
No, it really goes into the thing that I brought up before Overwatch League started was that I don't want to see Welch's, the official grape juice of the Overwatch League. It has nothing to do with Overwatch, and it's not something that Overwatch people really want, but they're paying us money, so Welch's, drink Welch's. This is the Welch's Grape Juice Dunk Challenge for Overwatch. It's like everyone's wearing their purple. It's like, I get it. Brand activations are hard, and this was, I guess, an all right execution of it, but I don't know. It just felt super forced.
I think you disliked it more than I did, which might be the first time.
It's not even that I
say that about anything.
It's not even that I didn't like it. It just felt really forced, and it felt like they were saying it way too much. Which I get,
it was a little
contractually obligated to say it a certain number of times.
It was a little too much to me. The aspect I like of it is that it's two teams vying for. It's like the California Cup, right? But that to me is just a better iteration of the same thing,
way,
right?
Other than this arbitrary thing we made up that has it has the belt, which is cool, but Nighthawk router like.
The belt would be cool if it didn't have a router on it, maybe. But,
Well,
I guess
like,
here we are.
I guess it's like there's no other like. Why am I caring about who has the Nighthawk challenge? Like the battle for LA, okay, great. You know the California Cup, great. I get it. It's California versus California. They're competing for bragging rights for that. Why isn't every game a belt game? It's just because they're both sponsored by that, which just feels like you're a little too on the nose for it, and you're forcing it a little too much. It had nothing like the belt itself and that whole like the gag. I thought was funny. I just thought that the fact that they're making up this importance for something that's very clearly not important was what was it was just a little off-putting. I'm making it sound worse than it was.
Maybe they need to develop it better and give us more of a reason to care about it other than that it exists.
Like if Nighthawk Router sponsored the California Cup, okay, and then you call it the Nighthawk Router California Cup, sure. That's a pretty standard, convention for, traditional sports things. I'm sure that there's different sponsored like bowl games in college football, right? I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. There you go. I don't know. It just felt like it was a little too much like, yeah. It felt like a little bit too much like, well, we have this deal with Nighthawk Router, and they're paying us X $100,000 every stage, so we need to give them something unique, and that's what they came up with. I don't know. Enough about that. Yeah, man. The one thing I will say about Washington Justice versus Toronto Defiant is that Janice looks much better on a hero that's stationary and is behind a shield, and he can't dive or charge into the other team with reckless abandon. He's a perfectly reasonable Orisa. When
unlocked.
Yeah, unlock Janice. Like, sign him back. I'll take him at Orisa. But any other matches that really stood out for you this past week, Death?
I thought Chengdu versus Philly was obviously goes to 5, so it's get some attention for the sake of that as well. It was a very compelling and fun game to watch. But despite my not being super big on Philadelphia, we did expect them to get better, right? We talked a lot about Carpe playing the Widowmaker and EQO being super flexible. And then we get here and it turns out teams aren't tripping over themselves to put Widowmaker into their lineup, and then we just there's still tank problems in Philly that didn't get better by trading away your best tank. Go figure. And the Chengdu Hunters, who I thought were going to be lackluster and disappointing in this metagame, stood up and got the W here. So I thought that was really interesting and a great match to watch. Obviously, Houston beating the LA Gladiators coming off of the loss to Paris. Nobody saw that coming. That was a case of, how many times, Blevins, have we uttered the words, you can't sub out Linkser, and we leave this week, and Linkser had an 0-4 map record. Dante had a 4-0 map record. Jake never left the stage and was their best performing DPS player. So I'm going to jump right ahead to one of the storylines and say, let's rank the Outlaws DPS players right now. Who do you put in what order between Jake, Dante, and Linkser? Let's all go ahead and assume our Hans for it. But I'm asking, who do you got? Well, like, what order do you put them in right now?
Oh, I mean, just based on this last week, I mean, Linkser is not the one that you want, right?
No.
Like, the Widow. Here's the thing about Widow, and I was thinking about this while I was watching the matches. Like, Widow has that pop-off potential, and like you can definitely swing a point or swing even a whole map with a dominant Widow. The problem is that it's almost at this high level, it's almost never consistently that dominant because the teams have the ability to shift the focus and counter the Widow, and then you switch to someone else. So if you're not having that dominant Widow performance, Widow is really lackluster. And in this, we've seen the Mays that create all these, or, remove sight lines. May was a widely played hero. We saw a bunch of Reaper breaking these Orisa Hammond comps. I mean, it's just, man, we wanted to see Widow, but I think we're only going to see it a little bit, and only as a, like, we're behind, we need someone to pop off and really swing this map, not our strategy is based around Widow. and it seems like these new, more consistent heroes like Ray, May, and Reaper, who are almost like the Brigitte equivalent of the DPS, or they're like the support healer kind of, because they like sustain themselves, where like Brigitte is like the tank healer. They're almost like support healers. So it's not goats obviously, but like it's got like shades, like little shades of goats in it. So I mean, Jake just seems to be better fit on those. Jake and Dante just seem better fit on these new meta heroes than Linkser does right now.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. I think we'll still obviously see Linkser on those maps where it's unavoidable that you have to play the Widowmaker.
He's also their Tracer player too, right? Like
Dante is their Tracer player.
But didn't he put Linkser was playing Tracer last?
They did at times when they had like when they wanted to switch to it, and Dante was like into the Sombra. But I think even in the first map against Paris, what they did was it was Jake on Sombra and it was Dante on Tracer. So I think it really depends on who the defining hero is between Sombra and Tracer, what exactly they're going to do there.
Sure.
But yeah, for me right now, Jake is the best DPS player on this team. Dante's performing a little better at his niche heroes right now. Like obviously a Sombra play is great and very, very important to the Outlaws' success. But Jake is picking up anything and everything you ask him to right now. I've never seen him play McCree before that I can remember. We've seen him on Soldier plenty and things like that, but he just picked up McCree, popped off, had a great, showing on it in the second match against the Gladiators. So I think to me, he is locked and loaded, has to be there. We've seen and heard a lot about what he does to their comm structure, their ability to communicate in game. He really, he's always been billed as the jack of all trades, master of none, as the broadcast pointed out.
Mean the Jake of all trades? The
Jake of all trades. But now we're potentially moving into a scenario where he is performing in the top tier of players at some of these positions and some of these heroes. So it's crazy to see. I literally, I mean, I've always been a supporter of Jake. I've liked Jake. Part of why I like this team. But it was never for his like standout. It was always his solid, like he's there, you let your other guy carry. He's a great asset. He can pick up anything and play it reasonably well on short notice. But it was never to pop off on McCree, right? That was always Linkser's job, and now here we are. So great job on Jake, and telling to me and frustrating, but we got there very quickly, so I'm not going to complain too much. The Outlaws were very vocal about how they arrived at the decision to play Dante 3 of the 4 maps in their second match, and that was, oops, we subbed wrong. Dante, you've got to stay in for map 2. And oops, Sombra's OP. So like they missed on the meta, knowing how good Sombra was, and then they missed on the fact that they substituted incorrectly. But it's just, it worked out, so people aren't going to be talking about it. But and it's great. That's better than it not working out, right? It's better than stage 2 where they were wrong
usually
about the
happens
meta
to them
and what they needed to do, and refused to change anything and got punished for it. So I'd take this over another stage 2.
Sure.
But man, we are still going to need to really take a long, hard look at this coaching staff and say, is Tyrong the man to lead this team and to coach this team going forward? I'm not saying you got to get rid of him, but maybe you bring in somebody over him to be the new head coach. And you really need to fill out the rest of the staff. Not that they can right now because of the ownership changing, and that's why they're so short-staffed on the coaching side of things. But it's frustrating to know that when they get things together and they figure it out, it's literally an oops, I didn't mean to do that. It's very unsettling. What happens when the meta changes going into the play-ins or the playoffs? You don't get an oops. Okay, that match you lost to Paris because you got it wrong is the end of you. You're done. At least in the play-ins. I think the regular season playoffs are double elimination, but regardless, you can't be giving away one of your 2 eliminations you get in the playoffs or anything like that. That's brutal. So it's disheartening and also great to see because they did give away that match against Paris, and they did need to get one back, and they got it back pretty immediately. So they're immediately back into the thick of things and 1 game out of the playoff spot right now, along with 4 or 5 other teams, but one game out.
Yeah, man, a 2-0 week from Houston would have been huge this week, but
yeah.
Definitely, man. I as much as I like to crap on Houston, I would love to see them make it into the playoffs because the NYXL versus Houston league playoff match is just the ultimate high noon podcast showdown where it would just be complete mayhem.
Yeah, but it would be such an awkward episode where neither of us are speaking to each other and we're just giving each other the evil eye over Discord.
No. We just get to make a wild and extravagant bet, and then the other person just has to like deck out and root for the other team the rest of the playoffs. It's perfect. It's actually perfect.
Well, as the guy on the outside looking in, let's cross that bridge when we get to it. Okay?
Yeah, for sure. Well, obviously, this was the first week of 222. And I think by many accounts, people have liked it. I believe we saw every single hero at one point or another. We saw plenty of May and Reaper. I'm basing that statement off of a Wolf tweet, so if it's not true, blame him. But yeah, I mean, just obviously a huge shakeup, but in your opinion, Death, is 222 actually better than what we had before?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, just by virtue, there's the obvious stuff, right? There's people were sick of goats. We didn't see that anymore. We got to see, for the teams that were in the 3 DPS meta, you got to see like your spaces of the league come back, and those guys are great to see. But I mean, we got like Shadowburn's back, just making highlight reel plays. We got all these. Right, we got all these guys unlocked, and it's more fun. All the Genji play we saw this weekend, and I love the fact that it's only the ridiculously good Genjis that can pull it off, right? Because they're only really it's not actually a meta hero, but it's just like the comfort picks for these super high skill players. I can build up my blade, and then I can kill 3 or 4 people with blade, and I can get one every fight because I'm that much better than other people on the hero. So super fun. We're seeing Baptiste come out of his shell in this meta, surprisingly. As you would have thought maybe he would have been good with his AoE healing on his right click to heal up a bunch of tanks, but he almost seems better now in this 222 meta, and we're seeing a lot of him. It was 25% playtime for Baptiste. Nice. So that was quite a bit. As far as seeing every hero, I don't think Soldier 76 touched the stage. But I think that's the only one that didn't, and that's assuming the OmnicMeta.com analysis is correct and fully updated, which it sure looks like it is to me. But yeah, and listen.
Yeah,
so it's been great to see a good amount of Baptiste come back into play and see a variety of different players playing it. Obviously, I think we saw a lot of main support players pick it up this weekend, and I think that's a cool element to really see some of those guys pop off on something that actually like has a gun. And I'm not going to count Lucio in something that has a gun because mostly it's boops you're getting there, right? But it's been great to see more Baptiste play. And then obviously you have all the DPS play that we've been seeing. Specifically, you talked about the May Reaper composition. I think we're going to see a fun little bit of rock paper scissors with this, because I feel like in my head at least, Reaper May is not a good combo against a Sombra. I think Sombra does a very good job against both of those heroes. So I think we're going to start to see maybe some of this ice fishing, Clockwork Vendetta, whatever you want to call it, kind of a style, go up against your more traditional dive. It's going to be a less traditional version of dive, right? Because it's going to probably involve Doomfist and Sombra and Wrecking Ball and things like that. But we're going to get to see a couple of different compositions, and this is just week 1, so I think we're going to really see that develop. See different styles butt up against each other, see things counter other things, and I think things are just more open for your kind of niche specialist pick, right? Your comfort picks, you're going to be able to go to those. So all things considered, I just think the game's in a better spot this way. But the one aspect of 222 that I didn't expect, it's most apparent on Havana, but I think it's made maps better, right? When you think back to what Havana was last stage, it's a lot of 0.1 holds, and this team literally didn't leave their spawn door because there was a goats comp standing outside of it, and they never let them, get around that first corner. We're not seeing that anymore, and teams are having to relearn that map basically from scratch. We're seeing teams not offer any defense whatsoever for the first 2 points now, and then they get to the very choke heavy third point, and things do slow down a little bit. But teams are going to figure that map out. It's not always going to feel that bad on the final point. There's some interesting high grounds. There's a lot of good defensive advantages, and there's ways to counteract that with characters that are, like dive characters, and Sombra obviously is invisible until she's standing next to your sniper, stuff like that.
Right.
So yeah, it's I think, considering this is like level 1, 222, and we see teams playing heroes that maybe aren't super mechanically high skill, like the Reaper May is not your typical first-person shooter kind of a lineup.
Right.
And I think those are going to kind of even disappear a little bit over time as people figure out how to play against them, how to counter them, and just get back into the swing of things with their main heroes. But yeah, so there's a variety of reasons why I think 222's been better, and it's just 1 week into it. So I think it's only going to continue to be more and more apparent that this is definitely the way to go.
Yeah, for sure. Also, by the way, it was Wolf that tweeted out that all 30 heroes saw play. So
somebody in chat said they thought like Soldier was used to run back to a point late or something like that. So it's very possible.
Technically correct is the best kind of correct.
Right, and that's kind of what we're looking at. But I don't think meaningful Soldier was played at a
Sure. But
I don't remember Symmetra either. But
I do. It was actually Houston versus Gladiators on second point of Hanamura. Gladiators attack. They use Symmetra to teleport up a bastion.
Yes, you're absolutely correct. Yep.
Aha. Yeah. Well, that was a specific point of knowledge that I
it was.
But yeah,
I don't even know how to respond to such a thing.
Such a thing that I knew happened. It maybe was because I watched the highlights of it literally minutes before we started recording. But the last storyline here that I wanted to talk about, if you did watch the matches on Twitch, that you saw, we can choose our MVP finalists. Right on the broadcast, the finalists have been selected. We have Sinatra, Super, Gushue, Twilight, and Janu. And a notable exemption here, though I don't necessarily disagree with the exemption, at least logically, but morally I disagree. No Jonak here. Anyone else that you're disappointed to not see on this list? What do you think?
My number 1 and my number 2 aren't on the list, so I think the list generally sucks across the board.
Who are your number 1 and number 2?
My number 1 is Chohyo Bin, and my number 2 is Mono. From there, I think number 3 is probably Twilight, and then number 4 would probably have to be. See, it's interesting, right? Because I want to go with I want to give a nod to the Shanghai Dragons and what they've been able to do and the way they've been able to rebound. But I'm stuck between the classic. What's the definition of MVP? Right. Is it just DM for the pop-offs and the PogChamp plays and the high mechanical skill, or is it the actual most valuable player on that team, which in my mind is Gamzu, since his kind of appearance on the team seemed to turn them around a little bit. They got things that, together once he really got acclimated.
When is it ever that? Is it ever not just the PogChamp?
When you're one person that's talking about his list is when that's what it is.
right.
So you can put either one of those two in there, and I'm fine with it. It's laughable to me. I'm sorry. Like, Super's had a great year, and if we're talking about most improved players from year 1 to year 2, I want to have a very serious conversation about Super. He's been great. He's not the MVP. He's probably, the 5th best player on the San Francisco Shock? 6th? Could be 7th when you start counting all the ridiculously high-skilled DPS players that they have to leave on the bench. That's not a knock on him. This is one of the best teams in the league. They're very deep. He's been great. But he's also riding the bench for Smurf. So how are you going to tell me that he's the most valuable player on a team, let alone in the entire league, when you're benching him going into stage 4 right before the playoffs?
Right.
I don't buy it. And now we get into a meta here where Sinatra is seeing about 50% stage time.
Right.
if he's the most valuable player on your team or in the league as a whole, he's sure got to be there. I think the MVP process is flawed. And I can say the same thing about Janu. I think Monty actually on broadcast said he was the 7th best player on the Vancouver Titans, and yet here he is. So to me, there's better selections on a lot of these teams to replace the players that got onto the list. I heard through the grapevine, this isn't official, that like the GMs voted for who should have been them, and they did it after stage 2. Stage 3 performances weren't even factored into this list in this consideration.
Really stupid.
It just makes the whole thing really dumb, right? We should be
sure does.
Just now getting to the point of narrowing this down to a list of 5, and not even publicly saying, because that's when they did publicly state it. Yeah. But this list is just, to me, objectively wrong. The only one there's 2 of them on the list that I think are viable candidates. So please go vote for Goushway or Twilight, because I think those are the players that truly belong on the list of the top 5 players in the league, which is essentially what we're looking at here.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know. And honestly, I don't think either of them should win. We've got 2 San Francisco players, and Choi Hyobin's not one of them. That to me is just insane. The guy never leaves the stage. He's good on every hero you ask him to play. He's even picking up the Roadhog right now and looking great at it. He's their best player to me, and they've got so many good players. So it's just crazy that he can not leave the stage and just not get the respect. He's basically Rodney Dangerfield at this point.
Cho Hyobin is Rodney Dangerfield. That's an episode title confirmed right there. Yeah, I mean, so I don't disagree with anything that you said. I think that this list is malarkey. Why are we putting players that are seeing... And here's the other thing. If they're basing it off of stage 1 and stage 2, why is Goushway on the list then?
That's a great question.
Because he was not the most valuable player at that point. I mean,
Wasn't
he
even
could
good
have
in
been.
stage 1.
He could have been. They didn't play him enough.
Yeah.
So I question a lot of things about this. And also, I think you summed it up nicely, so I'm not going to beat that dead horse. Also, why aren't we talking about Rookie of the Year? Where's Rookie of the Year talks here? I think that's more compelling. I mean, especially if they're doing the voting like this. This is trash. Right. Like Rookie of the Year,
we're voting for mid-season MVP is what it feels like, and even then, there's issues with the list.
Why in the world would you ever even have that, like, as something that you're voting on, and not just like a one slide thing that they talk about because there's nothing else to talk about during the All-Star break? Like, it's completely useless. Like, make MVP something. Like, it usually... I mean, I think people generally care about MVP over, like... every
other...
Yeah, over most other things, at least. I think you can look back in history and think, oh, yeah, 3-time MVP, 2-time MVP. That has some weight to it. People talking about Jonak as MVP. Like, last year, did they call Jonak Rookie of the Year last year? Did they do that? I don't remember if they even distinguished Rookie of the Year. But this is the first year that Rookie of the Year actually makes sense to keep track of. I don't even remember if they did it last year because everyone was a rookie. But, they should do it this year because this is the first year we actually have rookies, or the first year we have non-rookies, right? Like Goushway, really great Rookie of the Year candidate. A lot of these Vancouver Titans players, really great Rookie of the Year candidates.
Why aren't we having the most improved player conversation to talk about Super and things like that? It definitely would make a lot of sense, but I think I figured out what we need to do with this MVP race, since it's just kind of a mess. And
have the owlies that we talked about last year and never
well there's that, but also we need to start voting for the skin we want to see in the game. So I'm going to say we should be voting for Super now. Okay, because I want to see Reinhardt with just
blood-soaked hammer,
a blood-soaked hammer, but also a skull-less head and just a big smooth brain, just a big, I think that's what we would get, and so therefore I think that would just be easily the coolest. So yeah, that's what we've got to vote for. I guess vote for the skin you want to see, the character you want to see get a skin added to the game.
That's true.
That's about the most meaning this race has for me.
Of all the things, don't give us weird games that we don't care about in the All-Star game. Like, we don't care about stage champions. We don't care about the MVP means something. Rookie of the year means something. Don't fix it if it ain't broke. Those are things that are in traditional sports. People care about them. People talk about Rookie of the Year. Oh, LeBron James was Rookie of the Year. It's a hotly contested thing every year. Like, people at least talk about it. MVP, big discussion every year. It's another point of content. You can be talking about that the whole time. Now this, like, are they going to be bringing up, oh, well, Sinatra and the San Francisco Shock play the Hangzhou Spark. We're going to see 3 MVP candidates talking here, and the Welch's grapefruit juice grape belt, Matt. It's like, no, this is no, it's not good. You don't look at this list and think, oh yeah, these are definitely the MVP candidates. Whereas in basketball, it's like, oh yeah, is it LeBron James? Is it Russell Westbrook? Is it Kevin Durant? Like, okay, yeah, these are like obvious level one. It does not need to be a rocket science. It doesn't need to be an exam. It should be natural. You should be like, oh, we look at this MVP list and go, yeah, you know what? Probably. Last year, it did. Jonak, Carpe, I don't remember who else was on there, but like those, did anyone contest whether those two should be on the list last year? Was there anyone that was like, oh, I mean, Carpe, okay, yeah, sure. No, it was obvious. If I recall correctly, Fisher was on the list too. Not Gamsu. All of them were like, okay, yeah, these are huge, dominant, valuable players for the teams. This is just like, okay. So
yeah, we shouldn't be voting for MVP. Period. It should be done by a selection committee. Who
but apparently not
out.
The selection committee that chose these people.
And they want to, basically, I think that's essentially what happens, right? Like the casters and the those guys are basically making the decision, and I think the votes are basically a joke. So I don't think they actually really factor in too much. But we should be having this conversation through the playoffs, right? Because if you want to talk to me about the most valuable player, what if the Houston Outlaws never lose a game and Jake is popping off like crazy left and right, killing everybody the whole time? They make a run. Now they're in the playoffs. They make it through the play-ins. They're in the regular season playoffs, look to be really good. Then you're talking about somebody that would probably be at the front of that conversation. Now, I chose that because we had a long conversation about it, not because it's my team, not because I think it's going to happen. But you can substitute any player that's not been, terrible for 3/4 of the year so far. Right. Make them hot at the right time, get their team into the playoffs, put them in a good position to make a run, and they become a very viable MVP candidate. Now we don't have that, and apparently we don't even have stage 3.
Right, they're locking off. It should be like it should be weighted, right? Like you can have people who have been consistent and solid and strong throughout the whole season, and you can also have the hot hand. Like both of those can be most valuable player. If Jake to continue it, if Jake took the Outlaws from this week on and just, put them on his back and carried them into the playoffs and carried them to a championship, it's going to be laughable when he doesn't get the MVP. Right? Like it will make the MVP look stupid when we see Sinatra win the MVP. If in that scenario. So
if they want to keep voting, open the fan voting as soon as the play-in tournament ends or as soon as the play-in tournament starts, whenever you want to divide the line. But it should at least include all 4 stages, and then you'll also have your postseason MVP like you did last year, and that's when that'll factor in. And but now it's just cheap.
Okay, don't lock it. Just have it be. I mean, I get that the limitations of the extension, maybe they can only have a certain number of entrants at a time, but like don't have it be like we're actually voting for the MVP. Be like, who do you think should be MVP, and give a bunch of choices, and then you get like a pulse of the community, right? It's like, oh, Sinatra's popping off right now. Okay, great, that's cool to look at. Hey, at the end of stage 1, it looks like Sinatra got MVP for stage 1. Okay, cool. Great. We saw he got 80% of the vote because he popped off and destroyed stage 1. We didn't think that was going to happen. Cool. This is just like, well, we're going to give you a mediocre set of choices. Let's test out the extension. Okay, great. Thanks. you ruined something that could have been actually that could have actually been useful and worth talking about. But now, after this point in time, it's not, because we already talked at more than it deserved. But let's move on here. I'm sure we'll probably get back to that and beat that dead horse. But before we do that, let's talk about some matches that are happening this week. On Thursday, we got Guangzhou Charge versus the London Spitfire. Guangzhou did look pretty decent, but this is where London traditionally really gets into full gear, turns on the jet engines and makes their playoff run. It's going to be really hard for me to pick against London going into this stage 4. I got London 3-1 here.
Yeah, London is definitely a flawed team, but a flawed team that fits this meta pretty well. They're terrible on Koth, so I don't expect them to be winning many 5-map sets unless it's against lower tier teams. Probably not going to 4-0 a lot of people. Guangzhou does look great. I think they've got more than kind of your token puncher's chance in this matchup, especially given if Guangzhou is going to win the first map, all they need to do is sneak one of the other two. There are some maps London's not been great at, but I'm still, until I see London really truly kind of fall flat and show that the King of the Hill problem is more than just a bump to start every single match they're going to play. I'm going to continue to think they're going to be really good, because they're one of those teams that does adapt very well in metas and does improve over the course of the stage. So I think they're on a fast track. But Guangzhou's very hot. This could go the other way, but I'll also be taking London here with the score.
The other thing about London is that, unlike literally any other team, they know exactly what it's like to win and what it takes to win the whole show. They also have shown that they are not only a consistently decent, they're consistently good, they're consistently strong. They have ups and downs, but they know how to turn it on in a playoff scenario, and they don't crumble like a lot of teams have shown. So yeah, it's going to be tough for me to pick against London in these coming weeks. But moving on here, we've got Florida Mayhem versus Washington Justice, and I'm still, even though Janice looked better on Orisa, I still have my delusion of Florida being better, and I still cannot pick a team that chooses to start Janice. I'm picking Florida here in the 3-2.
Can I get a shame bell? And not for you. It's
Okay.
not for you.
Okay, sure. We'll get it. Okay.
Shame.
All right, that's for both of these teams. Why did you bother to go out and pick up new tank lines? Florida, you got Carry On, my wayward son, on the bench, ready to go. There's my sound, thank you. You've got Fate. You left him on the bench, and you played Swan. Why? Why? You picked up those two tanks because that one sucks. So why'd you go back to that one? Washington, Janice, and Sansam? Really? What did you get Lullish and Elevote for? I don't understand. Use them while you have time. You know you're eliminated, right? Like, you know it's over for you. See what you have in these other players. If neither of them play any of their new tank players, I'm going to turn this match off, I swear to God. Give me Washington 3-1.
We're going to cancel both of them.
I'm canceling both of these teams' season. It is incredibly frustrating that that's what we had to look forward to with these two teams in their matchups, and they didn't care. They just didn't do it. I don't understand. Sansam didn't pop off. Toronto's terrible. It hurts me in my heart to say it, but it's true. It's what happened. Anyways, moving on.
but Sansam is the queen of the north. Okay, no, not going to make that
Okay,
joke.
the coin actually stood upright like this. And
neither
it's not
team will
weighing
win.
in. Okay, it was a heads. That's fine.
Neither
I didn't
team
say who
will
was
win.
who.
I mean, Tails
for
haven't
Florida, because I do love you, bare hands. I'm just frustrated. And it is Tails, so Florida from...
Florida's going to win. Okay. Next up, we've got Shanghai Dragons versus Toronto Defiant. I wish I could pick Toronto to win some of these games. I really do wish in my heart that I could, but I cannot. Not only because Toronto is not looking so hot right now, but also Shanghai looks good. Like they weren't quite able to carry that same level of fire from the stage 3 playoff, or the stage 3 stage playoffs, but they are still a very good team. I got Shanghai 3-1 here.
Yeah, chat. Don't worry, he's not going to do it. But anyway, I do agree. I don't think Shanghai came in with the same fire. Everybody, they were the best team, right? We were at least asking the question whether or not anybody bought in that round on Around the Payload or not is another story. But they should have been more convincing this weekend than I think they were.
Yeah.
So I think they're very beatable. Toronto's just not the team to do it. Give me Shanghai here 4-0.
Yeah, I think Toronto almost always has a win in them, but yeah, it's definitely a Shanghai win here. Next up, we've got the LA Valiant versus the Seoul Dynasty. Man,
exactly. That noise you just made is exactly how I feel about my confidence in this selection.
Yeah,
I couldn't have said it better myself.
I've got LA here 3-2. Seoul, man, I can't explain it better than that exact feeling. I just don't know. I've got no confidence in either of these teams right now. LA has been better than they have been in the past, but they're not world beaters. They're not head and shoulders above anybody right now. Seoul, same story, really. I mean, geez.
Yeah, the Valiant, I think, are a team that are going to improve as they get space back acclimated to their roster, as they get used to the DPS rotation. They're going to probably want to do, if not need to do, in this meta with just two of them on the stage at the same time. It's weird. They became like harder to pin down when the rosters stabilized a little bit, even though their best players probably their best players back on the stage for them. They seem to have fallen backwards a little bit. Not much. They're still a very strong team, very solid team going forward. But it's going to take a little getting used to. I think they will. Seoul. Just make the sound again for me, please. I think we've seen one map with Fleta and Jae Hong on the stage at the same time this past week. They played twice, I'm pretty sure. I think I saw it. I can't even be sure anymore. I said in Discord, I think I did. I don't know. They're a nightmare, but that said, they just don't.
0-2 this week.
They just don't. They went 0-2 this week.
Yeah, Shanghai and San Francisco, they lost to.
Yeah, I mean those are really good teams,
Sure.
And I don't think the Valiant are really on that level. I want the Valiant to 4-0 this match. I want to be very clear. I have no love for the Valiant. I despise the way Seoul is running their roster, and I just want to see them punished for it. I have said it a lot.
Also, that probably gives Houston more of a shot, right? Like that, pushing one of these teams down makes them.
Well, I don't think
up a spot.
I don't think Houston can catch Seoul. So I guess from that perspective, I want to see Seoul win to deal a loss to the Valiant. Maybe give Houston a chance to go above him from there. But I'm not picking for that. I just Seoul, despite them doing this, they haven't become a losing team, right? An 0-2 week, it's a rough start, sure, but I do expect them to rebound. They're not playing terribly. Their players they shouldn't be subbing in are doing okay. They're just not getting that full team roster and synergy that they're going to need to make a deep playoff run. I don't think the Valiant are right now at that level of synergy. So on the surface, the Seoul Dynasty seem to be just a shade better than them at the moment, even with the musical chairs they're doing with the stage. So I'm going to go Seoul here 3-2. We're both 3-2. Neither of us are very confident, but let's let the coin decide on tails for the Valiant, and it's heads, so the coin likes Seoul.
The coin is
the only host here that likes Seoul, that's for sure.
There we go. On Friday, we'll start it off with New York Excelsior versus Paris Eternal. I mean, I say this every week, but this is the easiest 5-0 I've ever picked in my entire life. I'm not even going to entertain the thought of if Paris wins this. I'm not even going to entertain it.
I don't think there's any much reason to entertain them winning the set. It doesn't have to be a 4-0. That said, I do think New York is going to get their feet under them a little bit. If they stumbled this week, they're not going to do it again. The Paris Eternal are not the LA Gladiators. Transitive property says they're better than them right now for stage 4, but we'll ignore that since that's always garbage. So I'm going to go New York here 4-0. Everything's going to get back to.
I want to see some pine or some flower or some. I want to see like those specialists. Like I feel like if we don't start seeing them now, they might as well, like, you can pretty much sign the check that
It was
they're
so
gone.
long ago. I'm not sure. There was a decent amount of Nene played, right? Or was it just because like SBB started on
SBB
Koff, and then I
Libero.
think Nene came in for SBB.
I don't
I'm not
remember.
100% certain. But to me, I'm kind of with you. I think Sombra's too good to really ignore right now. Houston kind of figured that out, and I think other
Yeah.
teams are going to figure that out. They're going to do some scrims and find out what beats the Reaper May, and I think they're going to land on Sombra and probably get back to that. So I think there's a lot to be desired from what lineup the Excelsior kind of ran with, and I'm checking it now. Yeah, map 2, Nene came in. He was in for 3, and 4 was SBB. So they split playtime, and I think that's probably going to go in the direction of SBB. And I'm with you. It's not Nene I want to see come in when they want the Widowmaker specialist. It should be Pine. Get back to what you were doing last year when you were the best team in the league. You got a lot more mileage out of Nene than I thought they were going to get on the back of the Zarya play. That's great. Great signing. Got your work done. I don't think you need to justify it more than that. Put the two in a lobby and make them, fight until the first one of them gets 100 Widowmaker eliminations against the other one and play that player. And if they did that, and that's why Nene's in, fine, I'll shut up. But I have a feeling Pine would win that fight. So,
yeah. Well, my whole thing is like, A, I want to see Pine just selfishly and for entertainment value. But B, like, if you've got Pine and Flower and they've seen literal, well, I think Flower actually saw a little bit, but I think Pine has seen an actual 0. Like, what's he doing? Why, like, free up the spot. As much as I love Pine and I want to see him play, like,
somebody would have traded for him.
Someone probably would use him. I could see him fitting somewhere. But
we've been talking about who they were going to trade all season, and they just never did. And now it's like,
right. And YXL, I mean, they got rid of Arc and Janice, which I can see, but like, what's Pine doing? I don't know.
Yeah.
Regardless, 5-0 for New York. Next up, we've got Houston Outlaws versus the Philadelphia Fusion. Death, who you got?
I'm going to go Houston. I do think it's pretty close. Philly tends to play them very well. I never get the Sato throw games that I get to watch so often when it's Houston playing against them. But that said, I think the teams are at worst very, very close to each other, right? Like, so I think it's got the makings of a fiver. Hollywood's in the map pool makes me nervous. It's not Route 66, so it's not quite that bad. That said, I will be giving the match to Houston here 3-2. But yeah, I don't know. It doesn't have to go that way by any means. This is, to me, very possibly the closest set we're looking at.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of a must-win for both of these teams, right?
Yes.
Like it's definitely going to be close. I'm going to go with Houston as well. I think, like you said, it seems like they kind of found their footing a little bit now. Houston, if nothing else,
they found it before and still slipped.
They sure have. So I don't necessarily have confidence there, but I am picking them to win here. I'll give it a 3-1, but it very easily could be.
If I'm right about Sombra, they're also ahead of the meta, which should mean it'll take another week or two before teams kind of catch up to what they're doing and mirror it and have a plan for it. So I don't know.
Or are they 2 steps behind the meta? Like what level the reflector game?
It's one or the other, probably not both. But don't ever discount just the Carpe factor, right? Like the guy's actually on DPS now, so he could just take it over in a way that I'm not sure anybody on the roster, maybe Muma. Muma's the one that I think has the ability to show up, play out of his mind, dominate his position battle.
Linkser can.
He could, but I'm players that I think are going to spend more than 50% of their time on the stage, that have that chance. So yeah, that's kind of maybe what to look for. If one of these teams is going to dominate, it's going to be off the back of Muma for Houston or Carpe for Philly.
Sure. Next up, we've got Chengdu Hunters versus the LA Gladiators. Tier difference here. I think Chengdu fell behind. They are one of those teams that is technically in the mix, but has been trending downwards, or at least like staying stagnant. And a lot of these teams, LA Gladiators included, have been trending upwards. LA looked really, they looked really good against NY at least. Obviously, Houston looked really great against them, but it was still a close match. I got LA Gladiators here 3-1.
I'm with you. I definitely think it's a tier difference. I think the Houston kind of woke LA up a little bit, kind of got them on the right track. Chengdu is 2-0 this stage, so I can't sit here and say it's a huge difference or a huge gap between these teams because we don't know exactly what Chengdu is going to be. They've already surprised me a little bit, but I think you've got to do a little bit more than beat the Fusion, and I'm blanking on the other opponent. Boston. Oh yeah, they squeaked by Boston in a 5-set. That tells me they're not going to rebound. Gladiators here 3-1.
Yep. Next up, we got Guangzhou Charge versus Hangzhou Spark, and as we know, Gushui of the Hangzhou Spark playing for an MVP spot here. But yeah, I mean, Guangzhou looked pretty good last week. Hangzhou lost to Atlanta, which is. It's not a good sign, that's for sure. Atlanta is very streaky, but overall, give me Guangzhou here 3-1.
I'm also going to be taking Guangzhou. They seem hot. I am watching them play this weekend tells me they're going to be good. Now that doesn't need to continue, but Hangzhou has all these other problems going on all of a sudden, right? Mm-hmm. We have, and I'm looking up to just make absolutely certain before I say it. We saw No Smite come in this weekend. That was a stage 1 lesson that we thought this team learned, right? Mm-hmm. Why are you making this move? It doesn't make sense to me. The match was winnable at that point, right? Like it was 2-1 going into map 4. Mm-hmm. Hangzhou swaps out their players going into Route 66 and don't take first point. So now we've got like level 1 coaching decisions I'm worried about. Is Crystal going to be back? I think that makes a very big difference for this Hangzhou team. I believe he's their best DPS player. The combo of him and Godsby is much scarier to me than Godsby and Adora. Mm-hmm. So I think if Crystal does find his way to get back in here, that will mean good things for Hangzhou. So I'm going to hedge my bets and call it a 3-2 here win for Guangzhou. And I personally hope they win every set 4-0 here on out, because I think that might mean we get one map of Fraggy every single time they play.
True. That's what I'm hoping for as well. Moving on to Saturday, we've got the Atlanta Reign versus the Paris Eternal. In Atlanta, they did last week. They beat the Hangzhou Spark, and that was their only match. I mean, like you said, Hangzhou maybe had some questionable decisions against them, but they're no slouch outside of that. They, of course, do have an MVP candidate on their team. But like you said, Paris also looks pretty good. Shadowburn coming out of a shell and actually being able to play some Genji is looking good. Overall, I think Atlanta. I don't know. I just had the feeling about Atlanta. I'm not sold on Paris yet. I could definitely see Paris taking this. I'm going to pick Atlanta here 3-1, but I wouldn't be surprised if Paris even 4-0'd potentially.
It could definitely go the other way. I'm going to pick Atlanta here with you, also 3-1. Paris is definitely better than I thought they would be, or at least showed that this past weekend. Mm-hmm. So I think we need to perk our ears up a little bit and pay attention to them, see what they're going to be able to do. Definitely not out of the running for the play-ins, but I do think Atlanta is a little bit better positioned. Though it does seem like every time I buy into Atlanta, even a little bit, they tend to backslide. I will say enough of this splitting your off tank time. I think Dako's just the right play here. I think they need to play him. But if you're choosing FRD, or Fred, I should say, sorry, Thorin, I know you hate when I call him FRD. I think you really need to just pick one and go with it. Whether you agree with me about which one's right, they're both playing reasonably well, but this is the sole problem. You've got to make a decision. I think you can't be splitting them. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't know for sure. I don't think it was like a Roadhog versus Diva split or anything like that. If that's the case, I'll back off on it a little bit. I could see your best Roadhog player being somebody other than your best Diva, but in my mind from watching it, I don't think there was like a clear hero choice split between the two of them. So make up your mind, pick one, and go with it, and never switch again. But yeah, Atlanta 3-1 here.
Yep. Next up, we've got Florida Mayhem versus London Spitfire. As much as no, it's not close. London 4-0 here.
You picked the Florida Mayhem to go 7-0 this stage. How dare you?
Well, they already blew that out of the water for
you're,
me, so...
You're correct on 2 counts, London 4-0.
Next up, we've got Dallas Fuel versus the LA Valiant. Dallas. I mean, they lost to London last week, but which I mean, I guess isn't necessarily telling, but man, it's tough for me to pick Dallas. They just don't look great here. I got LA 3-1.
Well, Semler on the broadcast this week basically said beating Dallas right now means nothing more than, or it means the exact same thing as beating the Washington Justice, just that it means absolutely nothing. It was crazy shade. I loved hearing it. Thanks, Semler. Shout outs. It was great. I also don't disagree with, I mean, maybe not to that extreme, but I don't super disagree with him either. I've been vocal about what I think Dallas will be in this meta, and I don't think it's very good. So I'm going to be going Valiant here. 3-0. Dallas good enough not to lose one of the maps, but I'm not willing to say they're good enough to win one of them either.
Fair enough. Last match on Saturday, we've got the LA Gladiators versus the San Francisco Shock. Man, I think this one's going to be close like some of the other matches we talked about, but I think this is going to be two titans of industry battling off here. San Francisco, obviously a very, very good team with not one but 2 MVP candidates. But man, the more I'm saying it, the less sarcastic I'm sounding. So I need to stop saying it because I do mean it entirely sarcastically.
You meant Choi Ho Bin, right? No, oh no, he's not on the
Sure
list. That's
didn't.
weird.
Oh, at least Void and Roar. Oh no, I mean, LA does. They did beat obviously New York last week, and then they lost to Houston. So, I mean, it's tough. Really looking at those matchup results is tough to look at because LA looked good at least in both of those matches. Houston looked better. San Francisco still, I think they're kind of, they've dropped maybe a little bit out of their S tier, but they're still very high A tier ranked team. And LA is, I think, pushing into that A tier, if not there. So I think it's going to be a very close match. I'm going to pick San Francisco here 3-1.
Yeah, I'm going to go San Francisco 3-2. I think they are just on raw talent and raw just power level of their roster, the better team here. But the Gladiators seem like a more defined team and a team that knows what they're doing in this meta a little bit better. I think we're looking at, I love, man, hydration main tank is just a revelation to me, just to watch that man come in and play ball and play Orisa and be just fine at them. There's a very real chance that this is wrong and this goes the Gladiators' way because they seem so much more practiced at what they're doing, and San Francisco's substituting like crazy, but San Francisco might just legitimately have enough talent on the roster that it's correct. They've got arguably the best coaching staff or the best head coach in the league. They're kind of running things. So I'm going to leave my faith with Krusty for now and say that he's got them headed in the right direction, making improvements. But I think the Gladiators do have a bit of a head start here right now with how much has changed and how much is going on. San Francisco's, I think, substituting too much, leave Sinatra on the bench. Probably just play super. I don't know. It could be that just the best Orisa is hands down Smurf. I'll reserve judgment on that for now. But I tend to dislike. I mean, with how good super played, I almost don't care what the hero is. I want to see him struggle on the Orisa before I think about making a switch like that. And they didn't wait. They just went for it. So I don't know. San Francisco 3-2, but this is very, very close as well. This is another
probably big
match
match of the week candidate here. For sure. But I'm basing that off of their stage 2 standing, so take that for what it's worth. All right, rounding out the week on Sunday, we start off Atlanta Reign versus Houston. I gotta, here's the thing: Houston has a lot of momentum, obviously, after beating the LA Gladiators. They are going to be in a lot of must-win situations, especially against Atlanta, who's going to be right in that mix with them. This is a huge win. Would be a huge win for them. That being said, I just am calling the flub here. I'm calling the flub. It's in Houston's hands. They've got it at the goal line. A 2-0 week would be gigantic for Houston in terms of their momentum and their chances going into the playoffs, the play-ins rather. I just don't see it happening. They're going to flub. Atlanta, we've seen, can beat anyone. They can also lose to anyone, similar to old Philly, old bad Philly. Also had the old good Philly. I'm picking Atlanta here 3-1.
Yeah, in my heart, I just dislike you as a human being right now. But that's fine because they've been too inconsistent to really, outwardly disagree with it. Route 66 isn't a map pool for this map. The one thing I will say about that is it doesn't have to be as bad as it's been. Sombra's very, very good on that map. There's a lot of well-placed health packs that really kind of add a lot of value to the Sombra pick. So maybe Dante cleans it up a little bit. It'll be hard to say until we see it. And certainly we've seen more than enough terrible play from this team on that map to just automatically give that one to Atlanta. So if we're automatically conceding a map to Atlanta, I don't see how this doesn't go to 5. But I do think Houston right now is the better King of the Hill team. Sure. But again, like you said, they're wildly inconsistent. They're ups and downs all over the place. So I think we're going to see kind of the Dante Jake show here going forward with the very sparing use of Linkser. And I think right now Houston is just, it's a small edge over Atlanta, but I do think right now they're the favorite here. So I'll give them the 3-2 win, but obviously you can tell by the scoreline. I look to be confident when I can in my team, and I just can't be supremely confident right now. Too many subs for Atlanta, though, so slight edge to Houston, 3-2.
To be clear, I do think Houston is the favorite here. I'm just calling the flub.
You just hate
Houston.
me.
Yes.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yep. Next up, we've got Philadelphia Fusion versus the Toronto Defiant, and, I mean, much like the match before, I want to be able to pick Toronto here. I think it's at least winnable for them, but they're at the point where they need to show me some ability to win before I'm picking them again. Give me.
They have 7 wins on the season. They were 5-2 in stage 1. They've won twice in over 2 stages.
Yep.
How do you pick them to win? Philly 3-1.
Yep.
Prove me wrong, please.
Please do prove us wrong. We really want to see it. Next up, we've got Vancouver Titans versus Florida Mayhem. Do I need to even say anything more than that to know what we're picking here?
Nope. But Bare Hands, we do love you.
We love you, but not enough to give you even a single map win against Vancouver.
Vancouver 4-0, yeah.
This is almost a 5-0. And the last match of the week, we have Chengdu Hunter.
Didn't Vancouver just play Florida last week?
Oh, this might...
Did I screw that up when I wrote them down, or is that a run back?
Did we get a flip?
Yeah. Okay. No, hold on. It's Vancouver versus Washington. Which changes nothing.
Nothing. Yes. Okay. Vancouver. I was going to say, I'm pretty sure Florida played 3 games already.
We still do love you, Bare Hands. It's just not relevant.
Yes. We do love
the discussion of this match.
Like we said,
so, yes,
it didn't change anything. Yeah. Nothing. Our analysis changes not a bit. Last match of the week, we've got Chengdu Hunters versus New York Excelsior. Again, New York is looking a little shaky. They're not quick to change. This is just a multi-tier difference in terms of play here. Give me New York. I won't go 5-0, but 3-1 for sure.
Yeah, Chengdu's still been finding ways to be a little weird. They'll surprise them and take a map, but yeah, New York 3-1.
All right, everyone, that is it for the week. Sorry for the brief little block in the middle of the show due to some technical difficulties, but maybe the podcast folks didn't even know until I revealed right now. But that is going to be it, everybody. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Make sure you check us out. We're High Noon Podcast everywhere. iTunes, Spotify, Twitter, all that stuff. You can go to the Discord. Join the Discord. We are, I would argue, one of the most active communities in Overwatch League. Discord.me/HighNoonPodcast. Blazing Bob did confirm to me that we are now number 5 for Overwatch podcasts because of the change I made. So when you search for Overwatch podcasts, we're number 5 right now, up there right with Omnic Lab as well as many others. So thank you, everyone. Make sure you are checking us out on iTunes, and if you haven't already, I know we haven't asked this in a while, but leave us a review. It does help us move up that spot. Would love to move up a couple of spots in the rankings there. So if you haven't already, I know it's incredibly tough to do because iTunes is an actual piece of garbage, but head over there, leave a review, and let us know what you think. But Deathbow, anything else before we head out here?
No, that's it. Go Houston. Just guys, be glued to these games. There's so many playoff implications across all these matches. We're going to have to start really breaking down, which matchups are especially important as we get into the final couple of weeks here. But right now, this week, there was too many for us to make special notice of them. Yes, we want super draws leading into the play-in tournament. We want a 4-way super draw, so they've got to play a 4-player bracket before they go into their 16 bracket.
No, they just play a 4-player. They just play a 4-team gigantic Overwatch match in a created match. That's what they need in a workshop game.
But yeah, just keep watching these matches. Keep refreshing the standings page as soon as they end. It's crazy and it's a lot of fun. So enjoy it.
Yes, and we'll be enjoying it and talking about it again next week. Make sure to be there. Also at twitch.tv/HighNoon Podcast on Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We will be here live. We had a nice active chat today. Thank you, everyone who stopped by and talked and subbed and all that good stuff. But that is going to be it, guys. Thanks, everyone, for listening. And remember, it's high noon.
Got his boots and he put on his hat. Threw the coin away that same day. It's in his past and he's not looking back. He says, finding mine now, God's my way. He's not good, but he sure ain't bad. He'll make amends for the sins that he has. He says, I'll change the world one bullet at a time till I find mine.
We're actually the number 1 team for the Overwatch League podcast MVP candidates. We're the number 1 show, but they used season 2 year. They used month 2 of Overwatch as their bracket. So we're the only one. That's how we got on.